On October 2, 2025, as the first rays of sunlight crept over the monuments and marble buildings of Washington, D.C., the city awoke to a shock that would reverberate far beyond the capital's borders. In a decision that stunned the nation, the Supreme Court struck down the tariffs at the heart of President Trump's America First trade policy, unraveling a cornerstone of his administration's economic agenda. The news spread rapidly through the corridors of power, catching even seasoned political insiders off guard. The White House scrambled to respond, while lawmakers on both sides of the aisle rushed to interpret the implications. The ruling was a direct challenge to the executive power the administration had wielded for years, sending shockwaves through financial markets and newsrooms. Traders watched in disbelief as stock tickers swung wildly, and analysts tried to make sense of the sudden upheaval. Around the world, foreign governments and global investors scrambled to assess what the decision meant for international trade relations and the fragile balance of the global economy. With a conservative majority, many had expected the court to side with the administration, but the justices delivered a stunning rebuke, defying predictions and sending a clear message about the limits of presidential authority. The decision was sweeping, not technical, declaring clear limits on presidential power in international trade and instantly invalidating years of economic strategy. Legal scholars immediately began dissecting the ruling, calling it one of the most significant decisions in decades. Businesses and global markets, already reshaped by tariffs, now faced a new, uncertain reality. For many, the future seemed more unpredictable than ever, as supply chains and business plans were thrown into disarray overnight. The gavel's fall marked not an end, but the chaotic beginning of a new chapter in global economic warfare. As the world watched, the United States and its trading partners braced for the battles to come. To truly grasp the Supreme Court's decision, it's essential to understand just how central tariffs were to Donald Trump's economic vision during his presidency. Tariffs weren't just another policy tool. They became a defining feature of his approach to global trade and economic strategy. Tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, were wielded by Trump as a powerful lever to pressure countries like China, protect American industries, and force trading partners to the negotiating table. This marked a sharp break from decades of U.S. policy that favored free trade and open markets, signaling a new era of economic nationalism. The Trump administration invoked national security concerns and accusations of unfair trade practices, using laws like Section 232 and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, to justify sweeping tariffs on a wide range of products, from steel and aluminum to electronics and everyday consumer goods. While some U.S. manufacturers, especially in steel and aluminum, saw a boost from these protective measures, many other businesses and consumers faced higher costs. The increased prices on imported goods rippled through the economy, fueling inflation and putting pressure on small businesses and families. The business community became deeply divided, with some praising the tough stance and others warning of long-term damage. Retaliation from other countries was swift and severe. Both allies and rivals responded with their own tariffs on American products, escalating tensions and sparking a global trade war that affected industries far beyond the original targets. American farmers, in particular, were hit hard as they lost access to key export markets. Global supply chains, already complex and interconnected, were thrown into chaos, leading to delays, uncertainty, and financial losses for businesses both large and small. What began as a strategy to project American strength and leverage economic power instead triggered widespread economic conflict, both at home and abroad, leaving a legacy of uncertainty and debate over the true costs and benefits of Trump's tariff-driven approach. The legal battle that toppled the tariffs was led by businesses arguing the president had overreached his constitutional authority. They challenged the use of IEPA, a law meant for emergencies, not for rewriting trade policy. The Supreme Court agreed, the executive's power in foreign policy is significant, but not unlimited. The justices ruled that such sweeping tariffs required explicit congressional approval, which was missing. The decision was a forceful reminder that Congress, not the president, controls commerce and taxation. The court warned that unchecked emergency powers would set a dangerous precedent. This was less about tariffs and more about restoring the constitutional balance of power. The Supreme Court's decision split the nation, igniting a firestorm of reactions from all corners of the country. People took to the streets, social media, and public forums to voice their opinions, creating a cacophony of support and dissent. President Trump erupted on social media, calling the ruling a betrayal and vowing to keep the tariffs, setting up a constitutional showdown. His tweets were filled with anger and defiance, rallying his base and promising to fight back against what he saw as an unjust decision. His administration doubled down, insisting the duties would remain for national security. Officials held press conferences, emphasizing the importance of protecting American industries and jobs, and framing the tariffs as a necessary measure for the country's safety and economic stability. Trade advisors warned of economic doom, predicting severe repercussions for the global market. Meanwhile, business groups and farmers celebrated the end of chaos, hoping for market relief and a return to normalcy. The contrasting reactions highlighted the deep divisions within the nation. Workers in protected industries feared for their jobs, worried that the removal of tariffs would lead to layoffs and closures. On the other hand, consumers and global trade advocates saw hope for lower prices and stability, believing that free trade would benefit the economy in the long run. The ruling didn't end the debate, it moved the fight to a new front. Politicians in Congress began to strategize their next moves, while editorial headlines dissected the implications of the decision. Protesters, undeterred, continued to mobilize, shifting their focus to new battlegrounds. The public was divided, with deep anxieties and hopes on both sides. In coffee shops, homes, and workplaces, Americans debated the ruling's impact, reflecting the nation's broader struggle over its future direction and values. The Supreme Court's judgment exposed the nation's rifts, not just over trade, but over the very nature of American power. It brought to light the underlying tensions and differing visions for the country's path forward. The battle lines were redrawn, setting the stage for a prolonged and contentious struggle. As different groups prepared for the next phase of the fight, the nation braced itself for what was to come. The Trump administration didn't back down. It escalated. Even before the ruling, the White House announced new tariffs on lumber and furniture, with more increases planned. After the decision, Trump threatened a 100% tariff on foreign films, signaling defiance and cultural warfare. The administration vowed to keep the invalidated tariffs, daring the courts and Congress to enforce the ruling. Legal teams scrambled to justify new tariffs under different laws, launching fresh investigations into industries from semiconductors to aircraft. The strategy? Overwhelm opponents with legal ambiguity and keep protectionism alive by any means. The message was clear. The tariff war was far from over. The Supreme Court's ruling threw the economy into confusion. Businesses didn't know if tariffs were enforceable, paralyzing decisions and disrupting supply chains. Hopes for lower prices faded as the administration threatened new tariffs and expanded existing ones. Inflation fears persisted, with economists warning that uncertainty would keep costs high for families. Internationally, allies questioned whether to roll back their own retaliatory tariffs, but Trump's defiance made de-escalation unlikely. Companies and workers faced financial peril, with investments and jobs suddenly at risk. The ruling's real-world impact was immediate anxiety, stalled growth, and livelihoods in limbo. The economic war was now a constitutional crisis, with millions caught in the crossfire. The Supreme Court's decision sent global markets soaring, briefly. Hopes for an end to trade wars evaporated as Trump defied the ruling, triggering panic and market tumbles. Investors fled to safe assets, fearing unprecedented U.S. political risk. In China, markets whipsawed and officials called for cooperation, but braced for more unpredictability. The conflict now threatened the reliability of the American legal system itself. Worldwide, companies froze investments, waiting for clarity from Washington. The world questioned whether U.S. law or presidential will would prevail. The foundations of global trade trembled as the crisis deepened. The Supreme Court's decision and the administration's defiance have redrawn the map of American trade policy. Congress's authority over commerce is reaffirmed, but the president's resistance threatens the balance of power. If executive defiance prevails, the judiciary could be weakened, shifting the U.S. toward rule by presidential decree. Globally, the uncertainty undermines America's role as a stable anchor, inviting rivals to fill the vacuum. The risk: a fragmented world of regional trade blocs, less growth, and more conflict. The fight over tariffs is now a fight over America's identity and its place in the world. The outcome will be decided not by one ruling, but by ongoing battles in government, business, and at the ballot box.